Is multitasking ever a good thing? If you've been part of this community for a while, you've heard me talk about how hard multitasking is for our brains and why it takes up a ton of energy and time. I've always said that if you want to be more productive and less stressed out, stop multitasking. But you also know I'm a big fan of challenging our beliefs and assumptions. And recently, I've been convinced there's one situation where multitasking is a good thing. In this episode, I'll explain how multitasking might be good if you struggle with procrastination, and the one situation where it's okay to multitask. Okay, let's dive in. You've heard me tell this story before of how I locked myself in a stairwell twice last summer. It's really a Nicole greatest hit at this point. Right up there with the time I had to staple my pants together before the most important exam of my life. Have you noticed that a lot of my stories have to do with me being clumsy? Anyway, the short version is last summer I locked myself in a stairwell at work twice in the same week. The second time I had to call my colleague to come rescue me because it was pouring rain and I would have had to walk all the way around the building in the rain with no jacket to get back inside. How did this happen, you might be wondering? Especially, how did I make the same mistake twice in the same week? Well, I was doing a bunch of mental multitasking. I was packing up at work and thinking about a million projects. The new course I was creating, my productivity group coaching program. I was busy with my private practice and thinking about coaching clients. I was thinking about what to make for dinner that night, whether I should pick up Allison before or after I got my groceries. And I left my keys in my office and got stuck in the stairs twice. And this isn't the only time multitasking has gotten me into trouble. Allison loves to tell the story of how I put her in the bathtub one day with her socks still on. She thought it was hilarious when it happened, and years later, it still makes her laugh. What was I doing when I forgot to take her socks off before they got all wet? You guessed it. Thinking about a million different things. Everything I wanted to get done that night after she went to bed. I was brainstorming project ideas for work, and the usual mental juggling we all do as parents, right? I'm sure you've noticed this before too. Maybe your kids are telling you stories about their day over dinner while you check your emails from work, and all of a sudden your kids are saying, "Mom, you're not listening." Or you're trying to work on a project, but your colleague across the room is watching cat videos on YouTube, and it keeps pulling your focus. Mental multitasking is really hard for our brains. Your brain can't actually multitask in this way. Yes, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, but that's not the multitasking most of us mean, right? When we think of multitasking, we think of answering phone calls while writing reports, someone giving us a list of 10 things to pick up as we rush out the door and trying to remember them all, trying to stay focused on work when there are so many distractions. That mental multitasking, we can't do. Instead, your brain just switches really fast back and forth between the two tasks. So you're constantly shifting your attention between your emails and your kid's story, or between the client call and the report you're trying to write at the same time. The end result? Your brain is distracted and way more likely to make mistakes like forgetting your keys or putting your kid in the tub with their clothes still on. Those mistakes are normal when we're burning our brain resources with multitasking. Even though multitasking feels like it's making you more productive, it's not. It's taking up your time and energy, and it hurts your productivity in the long run. So, you know where I stand when it comes to multitasking. It's not a great thing for your brain, your stress level, or your productivity. But you knew that was coming, right? There's a but. A while back, I made a post on social media about why multitasking is such a bad habit, and a colleague commented that they find multitasking helpful in one very specific situation. What's the exception? When you would otherwise procrastinate or avoid the task completely. Let me give you an example. You know how I feel about bookkeeping, right? It's probably one of my least favorite tasks that I have to do in my job. Weird because I come from a family of accountants and engineers, and I actually do love math and numbers. It's the tediousness of the data entry that's no fun for me. I avoid it for as long as I can. And I grumble the whole time I'm staring at the stack of invoices that need to be organized and entered. One way I make those tasks like bookkeeping that I really don't love doing, but I have to do, more fun is by giving myself rewards. I schedule time for bookkeeping, then once it's done, I go for a nice coffee or get myself something sweet. Food is a great motivator for me, especially anything with chocolate or caffeine. And that does work. Rewards are great motivators for our brains. They help our brains learn super fast, and they can help you get started when you're procrastinating or avoiding. But that colleague of mine got me thinking, can I use multitasking to help with my bookkeeping avoidance? The other reward I've given myself in the past for tasks like bookkeeping is to do my bookkeeping while I watch a movie or whatever show I'm binging on at the time. I always thought about that as a reward. I get to watch this movie while I do this annoying data entry, and it motivated me to get it done. And it is a type of reward, but it's also a type of multitasking, right? I'm using multitasking to my advantage here. Instead of avoiding updating my invoices forever and procrastinating until I'm super stressed and rushed to get it done, I multitask to make it more enjoyable. I do something I like watching TV or listening to music, while I do the task I'm procrastinating on. It helps boost my motivation to get started and makes the task slightly less awful. And yes, in case you're wondering, I'm sure that multitasking does reduce my efficiency. I have no doubt that I would be much faster and make less typos with my bookkeeping if I worked in a quiet room with no distractions. But if the choice is to never get started or procrastinate for weeks versus get it done, maybe a bit less efficiently, I'm okay with option B. Is multitasking a good strategy? Most of the time, no. It reduces your efficiency, makes you more likely to make mistakes, and can be stressful because your brain is trying to juggle a bunch of things at once. The one exception, if you use multitasking to boost motivation for a task you would otherwise avoid or procrastinate on forever. And we know procrastinating can stress us out too, right? Multitasking with something fun, something you like to do, can help with motivation. It's easier to get started if you pair that thing you don't want to do with something that's fun for your brain. This episode is brought to you by my free workbook, your daily productivity checklist. Ever wished you had more time in your day? This free workbook will walk you through the steps I use to set up my day to maximize productivity so you can get more done without feeling totally overwhelmed or staying up all night to squeeze it in. You can download your copy at drnicolebyers.com/checklist. That's drnicolebyers.com/checklist. Okay, here's my challenge for you this week. Take a look at your to-do list and find that one task you've been procrastinating on. That one task that when you look at it, you instantly want to do anything else. Then ask yourself, how can I use multitasking to help me get started on this task? Is there something slightly more fun that I can do at the same time, perhaps, that will get me out of procrastination mode? Maybe you're like me and you put on a movie in the background and commit to working for as long as the movie runs. Or maybe you listen to an episode of this podcast while you work. We know this is going to make your brain divide its focus, but the goal here is to get out of procrastination mode. Multitasking with something you enjoy is fun for your brain. Once your brain feels good, it's easier to take action on that task that you're avoiding, even if it takes a little bit longer than it would if you focused on just one thing at a time. Let's do a quick recap of what you've learned in this episode. 99.9% of the time, multitasking is a bad strategy. It's stressful and overwhelming to try and juggle a million things at once. You're more likely to make mistakes as well. And everything takes longer when you multitask. The one exception, when you use multitasking to avoid procrastinating. Doing something fun while you do that annoying task you've been dreading and putting off forever helps boost motivation, makes your brain feel happier, and that can help build your momentum to keep going. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Nicole Byers, and this is the Bold Life Podcast.